Episode 5, Chapter 4, Play Up Your Breakdown. Chapter 4, It's so easy to play up your breakdown. Report. The twisted, monstrous thing that had once been an elf snapped at another, equally foul, that kneeled before the throne. Have they been sighted? Yes, your majesty. The dark elf hissed. They came on a pirate ship 2 days ago. They traveled to the capital, then returned the following day. There was an altercation with the royal guard, but they managed to intimidate the guardsmen into retreating. Figures. Astos, king of the dark elves, snorted. Brains never were a qualification for the guard. So they were back on that ship when last sighted. Were they leaving? No, your highness. The servant denied. They remained anchored. His report was cut off by a scream of agony as his king lashed him with a whip of lightning, face calm and expressionless. It's your majesty, dolt. Astos explained over his minions howling. The correct term of address is your majesty, not your highness. Say it. Another lightning bolt extended from his other hand, and his face contorted into an insane scowl. Say it. Your majesty. The tortured dark elf shrieked. Please forgive me. Of course. Smiling calmly once again, Astos cut off the magic, and the dark elf fell over, smoking. You've corrected the mistake. I shall forgive you. This time. Do it again, however. And I'll use rub instead. Losing interest, he waved the back of his hand at his servant. You may leave me now. Whimpering pathetically, the dark elf limped out of the throne room, and Astos fell to brooding. If they haven't left, that means they plan to stay in this land. Doubtless they've reached an accommodation with that idiot chancellor. If they don't have whatever they want here already, they'll be searching for it now. What could it be that interests them here? I'm so glad you asked that, friend. Another voice laughed as a black cloud congealed before the throne. If you would like, I could tell you. Astos jumped, surprised, then narrowed his eyes. Oh. It's you. He sighed disgustedly. Lose the dark, will you? It's not necessary with me. I suppose not. Sorry. The other three insist on it. I guess I've grown used to it. The figure in the darkness apologized as the black mists concealing it thinned and disappeared, revealing a pale, red-haired man in a heavy blue cloak. The whites of his eyes were blood red with black pupils, and when he grinned at the dark elf king, elongated fangs were revealed. Well, Astos. Want to know what they're doing here? Astos twitched at the informal use of his name, but held in his displeasure. Of course I do. Lich. He said the vampire's name in a mocking tone. Tiamat did not know when she came to call, though. And now you do. My master heard it. The vampire explained offhandedly. They made the mistake of discussing it amongst themselves when deep underground. My master hears every whisper the rocks make. The light warriors are troubled by the barrier my master placed in their path, and they seek a solution. And for it, they need the mystic key. I should have known. Astos groaned, slumping down in his throne. I always hated that stupid key. Family secret, ha. So they want to know where it is. With the royal family in the shape it's in, there's only one way for them to find out. Awaken the prince. Oh, I don't know. The vampire chuckled. They could be planning to come and ask you. Hilarious. Astos rolled his eyes. I don't think so. No, they'll be coming for me for a very different reason. I'd bet my throne that they plan to get the cure for the prince's sleeping spell out of me. That's their only reasonable course of action. I see.
The vampire frowned.
So there is a cure, then? Yes, but don't worry.
The Dark Elf King grinned unpleasantly.
Even if they somehow figure it out themselves, I've already taken action to neutralize it.
The vampire grinned back, equally hideous.
You are a sly one. Then they truly have no choice but to come to you? Will you be prepared? Garland did lose to them. Garland was old and past his prime, as Tiamat herself said.
Astos snorted.
I'll be ready, don't worry. As a matter of fact, I may just be able to use them for myself before I kill them. Do whatever you want, just make sure to get the job done.
The vampire instructed.
I'll be off, then. My master doesn't like it when I leave him for too long. Good luck to you. Or should I say, ill luck to them. It's all the same in the end, I suppose.
Reforming the black cloud, he disappeared with it, and Astos was alone with his thoughts again.
Indeed it is. If I play my cards right. I think I will use them, though. If they're truly desperate to find the cure, then I can finally get what I deserve.
Astos closed his eyes, smiling in anticipation.
And for gratitude, I'll make their death swift. Ogres and creep, ogres and creep. Enough already with the ogres and creep.
Luke yelled in frustration, removing the head from one of the former. Its partner paused from his assault on Drake to stare stupidly, and the elf darted in, running the brute through the heart.
Yes. Told you I'd be able to take one down by myself soon. Will wonders never cease?
Vlad remarked, stabbing a creep through what he thought was a vital organ. His guess was right, squealing, the evolutionary train wreck expired.
That's all of them.
Luke looked around and sighed.
I thought this was supposed to be dark elf territory. But all we're seeing is ogres and creep, we know.
Drake admitted.
I'm guessing the real bad boys are keeping their heads down. We have kind of been going through these things like a natural disaster. Dark elves are nasty, not stupid. They won't come to us until they figure out what we're here for. So we'll have to go to them, or else we'll never get anything done.
Luke shook his head disgustedly, then jerked it up in surprise.
Heads up! More coming!
3 more ogres burst into the glen, roaring and waving their clubs. 2 of them looked like normal specimens, big, strong, ugly and dumb, but the third was altered, skin tainted green and face twisted in an expression of vile glee.
What's that supposed to be, Drake?
Turning to regard the elf, Luke's eyes widened. Drake was staring at the green ogre with pure hatred. Before anybody could stop him, he launched himself between the other 2 ogres and jumped at the green, screaming in rage.
What the hell, idiot?
Vlad yelled, then shook his head and turned to another ogre, spitting out the incantation that would cover it in ice. Luke swore as well, intercepting the last ogre while Mary skirted the conflict, trying to edge around to where Drake was charging without any subtlety or style, hacking at the green ogre's chest. Despite his anger, though, he was unable to chop through the monster's rib cage. Grunting, the green ogre poked at him almost casually with its heavy stone club, and that simple motion knocked him away. Rolling back to his feet, he slashed again and was repelled, this time smashed into a tree. The green ogre advanced, eyes burning, then howled as Mary's hammer smashed into the back of its knee, toppling it. Stepping past it, Mary began healing Drake, who shook his head to clear out the stars.
What were you thinking?
The white mage demanded angrily, then froze as a shadow fell over her. Bellowing, the green ogre lowered his club down onto her. Before he could raise it again, though, Drake was leaping at his face, and his saber went through the monster's eye into the brain. Dropping, the elf pulled the stone club off of his friend, wincing at its weight.
Mary. I'm okay. It was just a glancing hit.
The white mage explained, then started casting healing spells for both of them.
Glad to see you're both alive.
Luke grunted. He and Vlad had both finished off their foes.
Against all logic. What was that about, Drake? You almost got both of you killed with that little stunt. I'm sorry.
Drake looked away as his wounds healed.
My bad, I know. I lost my head. I just hate those things. Really bad. I know I'm not as good as you. It won't happen again, I promise. Let's go.
Standing, he walked away, the others watching him go.
Idiot.
Vlad summed his opinions up.
Next time he does that, don't risk yourself for his sake, sister. He said there wouldn't be a next time.
Mary shook her head, following.
And I believe that. Hey, guys. Come here.
Drake yelled from up ahead, cutting off the argument.
We may have hit jackpot. Check this out.
Luke immediately followed him, and after a moment the mages went as well. It was a castle, but it resembled the Temple of Fiends more than the hearts of Corneria and Elfland. Old, battered, and decrepit, it squatted in the gloom of the forest, the trees weaving their branches through holes in its surface that spoke of neglect and decay rather than the intentional harmony of the castle of Elf. The doors gaped open, rusted on their hinges, and as the light warriors approached a few bats flew out, squeaking angrily at the intruders in their domain.
Looks deserted.
Luke pronounced.
You think there might be some dark elves here? It's worth checking out, isn't it?
Drake shrugged.
First building we've seen in these parts, and a castle to boot. I don't know Astos personally or anything, but from what we have heard of his personality, this would be right up his alley. Can't hurt to look, I guess.
Luke agreed. Exploring the castle, they quickly discovered that it was indeed deserted. Hall after hall and room after room, all were empty and devoid of life save for a few more bats.
It's abandoned, all right.
Mary shuddered.
Gives me the creeps. Not totally.
Drake disagreed.
No bodies here now, but the dust on the floor has footprints in it. Ones that aren't ours. Somebody else comes here often, even if they aren't here now. Although we still won't know that for sure until we explore the entire place.
As if to confirm his words, the next room they entered banished the illusion of abandonment. There, seated on a tarnished and aged throne, was an elf in red robes. His hair and mustache were a forest green, but there was no crown on his head, despite his appearance and location.
Ah! I thought I heard visitors.
The Lone King greeted them.
Welcome to my home, although I'm afraid it's not exactly in top condition at the moment.
Luke frowned, then glanced at Drake.
Is he?
No. Drake shook his head.
Like I said, dark elves are changed by the evil they fell to. It's noticeable. Hail, Your Majesty.
He bowed to the king, and after a moment the other light warriors did as well.
Rise, my young friends. I am no longer a king of anything save name.
The Lone King sighed.
My family's kingdom fell long ago, when the dark elves came into the northwest. We were once a separate land of the Elven, but for that was destroyed generations ago. But even after that, my family remained in these ruins. Now I am the only one left, and when I pass away, all trace of what we once held will be gone. The dark elves don't attack you.
Mary inquired, and the king smiled bitterly.
My family amuses them, I think. They've taunted and harassed me for my entire life, but never actually attempted to kill me. That would spoil their fun. I assume you have come to this part of the world in search of them.
He closed his eyes and thought.
Would it perhaps be related to the Prince of Elfland's malady?
All 4 light warriors jumped at that.
You're a wise man, Your Majesty.
Drake was the first to recover.
How did you hear of that? We only learned of it recently ourselves. Astos.
The king spat the name out.
He is the most frequent of my tormentors. On one occasion, he taunted me with knowledge of the royal family to the south.
He smiled coldly.
And it seems that foolishness shall cost him. For he also told me of the only place in the world where the cure can be found. Heh! I had hoped Astos would be a fool.
Vlad chuckled grimly.
Where is it, then? Unfortunately, that is unhappy news.
The king admitted.
The spell Astos used was once a royal secret of my own family. And it, as well as the counter spell, are engraved on my family's crown, which was lost many years ago. Stolen by a vile order of magicians. The Wizards of Marsh. Ah, no.
Drake groaned.
Not that. Anything but that. From your reaction and the name, I'm guessing they're in this marsh cave you told us about.
Mary grimaced.
Looks like we're in for a hard job. We don't have any choice, though.
Luke stated firmly.
We've got to get that cure. You don't get it.
Drake shuddered.
The marsh cave isn't something we can deal with. Nobody can. Look, I know it'll be bad, but...
Mary started to speak, but Vlad interrupted her.
You realize you're talking as a member of the group that's going to take out the fiends?
The black mage reminded him coolly.
Are you saying this marsh cave is worse than them? Well, no, but...
Drake fell silent, thinking.
Damn it! Okay, if we get the best of everything the capital has. Weapons, armor, magic. And if we stock up with a hell of a lot of healing potions, we might be able to make a smash and grab. Run in there, grab that crown, and get out. Not like the rest of us wanted to buy real estate in there.
Luke joked.
It's a plan, then. Every instinct in me cries out against it. But okay.
Drake reluctantly agreed.
Thanks, Your Majesty. We'll try and bring your crown back to you, then. Do, and I'll translate the markings for the counter spell.
The king promised.
Good luck. The marsh cave has been a part of Elfland for as long as we can remember. Every generation has known of its existence all too well.
Drake explained moodily, staring into the small fire. After returning to the capital and equipping themselves, they had set off to the west. Now, camped at the edge of the pestilential swamp that contained the cave, they had set up for the night in a one-night magical cabin that worked on the same principle as the tents. For the night spent this close to the cave, Drake had insisted on the expense, and they were now sitting around the fireplace in the cabin's common room, listening to his stories of their target on the morrow.
The best theory of its existence that I've heard is that ages ago, when my people were careless about magic, they used the cave as a testing ground for new spells. Over time, all the magical residue built up, and it began taking a physical form that affected everything around it. Everything in there is mutated horribly. There's a stronger breed of creep in there called the Crawl, which suggests they originally came from there, and that's just the beginning. I knew there was no way those things were a natural evolution.
Mary joked, then fell serious.
So, are those the worst things there? Hardly.
Drake shook his head.
Like I said, a bunch of the wildlife's mutated. There's undead too, worse than what we saw in the Temple of Fiends, I'll bet. And then there's the Wizards of Marsh. I've heard of them.
Vlad growled, eyes narrowing.
They have an unsavory reputation. Mutated by their magic, although probably in a different way than dark elves. Their heads resemble some kind of cephalopod, or so I've heard. Yeah. They're both nasty types, but the dark elves and the Wizards of Marsh hate each other's guts.
Drake agreed.
They tend to thin each other's ranks out a bit whenever they clash. So at least we won't have to worry about dark elves in this area. And before you ask, no, there's no known connection to the fiends here either. It's just a downright nasty place full of downright nasty things. And we're heading in there.
Luke sighed.
Well, no helping it. We'll just have to endure. We should probably get a good night's sleep tonight. We'll need the rest tomorrow.
The night was only disturbed once by a pair of angry poltergeists. That aside, the light warriors slept well and emerged the next day, ready to tackle the marsh cave. Following Drake's instructions, they weaved their way through the swamp until they found it a gaping crater in the earth 20 feet wide, swamp runoff dripping down into its dark expanse. From one side, the ground sloped down harshly, providing their way in. As they walked under the overhang, Luke shuddered at the slime dripping into his hair.
We're near the coast, right? Tell me we're near the coast. Yeah, this is near the South Ocean.
Drake confirmed.
Couple hours walk from here. If we make it out of here before nightfall, we should be able to set our other cabin up on the beach and use the ocean water to clean this gunk off of us. We don't want to get ourselves messed up by it. Not that anybody would be able to tell with Vlad. Hilarious.
The black mage commented, glancing ahead of them.
Why don't you use your brain for something useful and tell us which way to go?
The cavern forked in a T-shape to the left and right.
I don't know.
Drake admitted.
The only ones who have ever been in this place and made it out alive are the wizards, and they don't exactly give us maps to be nice guys. You're useless.
Vlad sighed.
Somebody pick one, then. Right.
Luke shrugged and walked ahead, then paused.
Uh-oh. Company.
2 Kraul were advancing, pale and grey-colored, and with them was a monstrous green wolf, eyes glowing red and fangs dripping.
I'll take the dog.
Yelling, the fighter engaged it while the other spread out.
Watch out, its bite is poisonous.
Drake warned him as he and Mary began stabbing and hacking at one Kraul.
And these ones stun, so be careful about them too. These would be the stronger types, then.
Vlad noted calmly, freezing the other Kraul, then blasting it apart with a lightning bolt.
Still just as ugly.
Mary smashed the Kraul flat, and Drake stabbed it a few more times to make sure as Luke beheaded the wolf.
Did the wolf bite you at all? Nope. Got me with its claws a couple times, but that's it.
Luke glanced at Drake.
Those aren't poisonous, are they?
The elf shook his head.
Not as far as I know. Let's keep going. The sooner we get the crown and get out, the better.
The light warriors moved on, following the cavern. When they reached the end of the path, there was a man-sized hole in the floor with a rope ladder leading down. Climbing down, Luke winced.
Bunch of skeletons down here. Poor saps. Yeesh, this one looks fresh. It's covered in blood. Look out, man!
Drake yelled, climbing down as well.
They're probably animated.
Indeed, the skeletons were rising, jaws clacking in silent laughter. Most of them were easily mopped up, but the bloody one gave Luke several deep wounds before being shattered. Reaching the bottom of the rope ladder, Mary passed him a healing potion, which he gratefully drank.
You did good stocking up on these. Thanks. Don't get careless. There's more.
Vlad hopped down and indicated some approaching zombies.
Let's go.
4 hours more, the light warriors trudged through the marsh cave's filth, encountering new terrors around every corner. Humanoid, flickering shadows that blinded their eyes with a touch. Horribly strong, 4-foot scorpions with massive claws and plated armor. Even the slime of the cave itself come to life, immune to physical weapons and only destroyable by Vlad's magic. As they emerged onto the 3rd floor down, all 4 light warriors had taken numerous healing potions in order to survive. Looking around, Drake slowly nodded.
This floor looks like it's filled with separate rooms. I'd bet this is where the Wizards of Marsh are headquartered. We've found our goal. These wizards, do they tend to use any specific element?
Mary asked.
Afraid not. They just stick to concussive magics.
The elf shook his head.
Why? If they had, I could have given us some magic of my own that guards against elemental spells. But not that.
The white mage sighed.
Oh well. Hey, those'll still come in handy against the fiends.
Drake told her.
Can't get much more elemental than that. These guys are pikers compared to them. We can take 'em, no sweat.
He paused for a moment.
Right, that just leaves the question of which room has the crown in it. Let's try and be quiet so we don't have to fight any more of them than we have to.
Mary suggested, and the others nodded. Moving cautiously, they began looking into one cave after another. The first 2 were unoccupied, but as they peeked into the 3rd, 4 bulbous yellow heads turned to stare at them. Their faces dripped tentacles, they wore white robes, and in their hands each of them carried a staff.
The Wizards of Marsh.
Vlad bowed to them coldly.
Some of them, anyways.
One of the wizards glanced over them, then inclined his head to Vlad.
And you would be from Gaia, I expect. Same with the woman. These 2, though? Common sell swords? Not that it matters.
He raised an eyebrow.
Were you just paying us a visit, magician to magician, or was there something we could help you with? The crown.
Luke pointed.
There it is.
Beyond the wizards, on the head of a stone statue, a golden circlet glittered.
So, that's what you're here for?
The wizard pointed his staff at them, and the others followed suit.
Well then. That goes beyond courtesy between professionals, I'm afraid. You'll have to fight us for it.
All 4 barked a word in unison, and blasts of energy flew out of their staffs at the light warriors. Vlad replied with an incantation of his own, and a large spread of electricity radiated out from his hands, intercepting and dissolving the attack.
Was that all you could do?
The black mage snorted.
This won't be too much trouble, then. Lightning too. An impressive spell for your age.
The lead wizard acknowledged.
But how many times can you cast one of that level without exhausting yourself? Hey big shot, there's the rest of us too.
Luke growled, charging at one on the left. The wizard blocked the sword with his staff and fired into his chest. Grunting, Luke swung again. On the right, Drake sliced at another, moving past the staff to inflict light slices from his saber on the octopus face. Hissing, that wizard smashed at him with his staff while another fired at him, knocking the elf down. Laughing, the leader turned to fire at Luke. Grunting, the fighter kept hacking at his enemy. The silver sword he had acquired in Elfland caused the wizard to scream with each hit, until finally he collapsed, twitching. The leader sneered, unconcerned, and blasted Luke again.
Bah! No matter. The rest of us will finish you easily.
His eyes widened in horror as he felt the heat rising, and then the remaining 3 wizards all burst into flame. Vlad shook his head in contempt, fire pouring from his palms.
You seem to have forgotten, but in response to the question you asked anyways. 3 times. And I doubt I'll need the 3rd for this, so I can keep it in reserve for our way back. After we take the crown. You insolent!
The lead wizard growled, leveling his staff despite his pain and firing. The magic blast caught Vlad in the chest, sending him flying into the wall of the small room, where he slid down in a heap. Growling, he turned back to his allies, only to see them falling to Luke's and Drake's swords. Another blast from his staff sent the elf flying as well, but the wizard he had been fighting was already dead, as was the 3rd. Luke, battered and bruised, started to advance, but Mary was there first, hammer slamming into the wizard leader's face and shattering his skull. Dropping it, she rushed to her brother and began healing him.
Vlad, are you all right? Like a amateur like that could kill me.
The black mage slowly stood, grunting, as the healing spells covered him.
I'm fine. Heal the clown. He needs it more than I do. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm okay too, Grumpy.
Drake stood as well.
Not that I'd object to being healed by Mary or anything.
Mary smiled, obligingly healing him as well.
Well, we did it, anyways.
Luke stepped up to the statue and pulled the crown off of it. Solid gold and surprisingly heavy despite its slender appearance, the crown was covered in runic markings.
These would be the ones that tell about the spell Astos used. Once we get this to that king, he can translate them, and we'll be able to get the key.
He slipped it into his pack.
Right, now all we need to do is get out of here. Easier said than done.
Drake muttered.
Oh well, at least we know the way now. And you guys still have a few spells in reserve.
The mages both nodded.
All right, let's do it then. Remember, once we get out and get to the coast, we can wash this gunk off. Now that's motivation.
Mary smiled.
Let's go. Are you still here, Your Majesty?
Drake called as the light warriors walked into the abandoned castle.
I'm in here, young man.
The Lone King called back.
Was your search successful? Definitely.
Luke grinned as they walked in, producing the crown.
The wizards of Marsh are dust in the wind, and we got this back for you. Here you go.
He handed it to the king, who snatched out of his hands eagerly.
Yes. My crown. Finally, I have it. It's been so long.
He placed it on his head, and smiled reverentially.
So long. Glad to be of service, Your Majesty.
Mary smiled.
Could you tell us what the cure for the prince's affliction is, then? Oh, yes. I did say I would. Well, I might as well keep my promise.
The king looked at them again, a strange light in his eye.
The cure is a special herb that only experienced witches can grow. At the moment, the only one remaining outside of the far north is one named Matoya, who lives near Corneria. Matoya.
Luke jumped.
We've met her. Hey, you didn't even look at the crown. How did you know? Let me finish, please.
The king's smile grew wider, looking rather unpleasant now.
Unfortunately, Matoya is currently unable to locate the herb among her stock. Her eyesight has been stolen from her, since she required a magic crystal to see, and that crystal was stolen several months ago by the caster of the spell. The king of the dark elves, Astos.
He began to chuckle, low and dark, as his form began to shift and mutate. His skin became green and reptilian with unhealthy spots, and the very shape of his body warped, changing to a top-heavy torso with weak, withered arms and legs. His hair became a wild mane with strands of red mixed in with the green, and similarly red claws and fangs sprouted. The same red as his eyes, sunk in black and staring insanely at them.
It's right over there, above the door you entered through. Not that you'll be doing anything with it, fools. A dark elf?
Vlad snarled.
I thought you said he wasn't. Some sort of illusion magic.
Drake explained, eyes narrowing.
And there's only one dark elf who could pull that kind of garbage. This must be Astos. We've been played like a piano. Correct, elf.
Astos grinned, a forked tongue snaking out between his teeth.
King of another elf country? Ha! This is the crown of Elfland. For decades, it's been out of my grasp, but now it's finally mine. And it's all thanks to you. Why the heck do you care about that?
Luke growled.
Why? Why? Why?
Astos' voice rose to a shriek.
Because it's mine. The throne, the crown, the kingdom. They are mine by right, not that dozing cretin in the capital. What, you think it works like some kind of rite of caste? That by killing the king, you can be the king?
Drake shook his head.
You're pathetic. You know nothing, dolt.
Astos snarled.
The kingdom is mine because the king was my father. Even if he refused to acknowledge me or my mother, even if she took me away from him into the wilderness and lied to me about my parentage, even if that damned chancellor gave the crown to the wizards of Marsh so that I could never claim it, I am the firstborn son of the king. And this crown is mine. Mine.
He was actually frothing at the mouth now as he screamed.
I am the king. The clown was right.
Vlad spat on the floor.
You're pathetic. How long have you sat here in this shambles of a castle and pretended to be something you knew you could never be? Decades. And now you have your little crown, and you think that makes you anything more than... The term is bastard, I think. Damn you! Damn you all!
Astos raised his hands, magic forming in them.
You're all laughing at me. You think you're so big, so much more than I am. Well, I'll show you, all of you. Die.
A white block of light flew out from his hands towards Vlad, but before it could hit, Mary quickly cast a spell of her own, and the black mage shimmered, disappearing.
That's the rub spell.
She yelled at the two others.
Whatever you do, don't get hit by it. It's death magic. You recognize it. Skilled, aren't we? And that's Invis, isn't it?
Astos leered at her.
But that won't be enough, I'm afraid. Try this, then.
He hovered into the air, arms and legs dangling limply along with a whip-like tail. From his clawed hands, however, lightning bolts flew out in large clusters, striking them all. Grunting, Luke and Drake glanced at each other, nodded and ran forward, flanking the Dark Elf King.
Magic isn't the only thing that counts in this world, Mr. High and Mighty.
Drake yelled, stabbing up at him. Astos hissed as his feet were stabbed, and his hands began emitting clouds of green smoke instead. The two of them were too close to dodge and fell down, snoring, but Mary and Vlad were able to move away.
Wake them up!
Vlad yelled to his sister.
As for you..."
Lightning bolts akin to the ones Astos had just created appeared, returning to the Dark Elf King. Shrieking, Astos fell, then rose into the air again. Charging the spot where the bolts had appeared from, he viciously backhanded Vlad into a stone pillar.
"Got you! And we've got you!"
Luke yelled as he and Drake rushed Astos again. Growling, Astos flew up once more.
"If it's a physical fight you want, then I'll oblige. After one more spell, that is."
Chanting, Astos' body became covered with shimmering green light for a moment, and he flew back down. This time, however, even as the sword sliced into him, the Dark Elf King's hands moved faster still, whirling around him like whips. In less than a second, he struck Luke in the face 3 times, then whirled and kicked him in the same motion, sending the brawny fighter flying like a toy.
"That'll teach you!"
His eyes widened as Luke's injuries were healed, and he turned to Mary.
You're the type to undo all my hard work. I hate healers like you. And you did that to your other partner too, right?" "Oh, yeah,"
Vlad confirmed as another green glow covered Astos.
"You used the fast spell to up your physical power and speed. Nice, but the slow spell should nullify that." "Not good enough,"
Astos shrieked, lunging at Mary.
"I'll start with this one, then without her, you'll have nothing to save you. Die, wench!"
The rub spell formed again and flew at her, point blank. But at the last moment, Drake knocked her aside, taking the hit.
"No!"
Mary screamed.
"Get him! Guys!"
Drake smiled weakly as his skin paled.
"You can still do it without me. Kill him!"
And the elf toppled, eyes rolling back.
"Don't freak out!"
Vlad snapped at his sister.
"We can get him to a cleric after we finish this joker. But only if we win." "Yes, and that's not happening, I'm afraid."
Astos sneered.
"So it was the elf first instead?" "That matters not. I hate his kind too. And you'll all be joining him soon anyways." "I beg to differ, scum."
Mary began muttering incantations, but Astos just laughed.
"Ha! What's that spell supposed to be? Puny white magic, I'll..."
His voice cut off, and he clutched his throat, eyes bulging.
"It's the mute spell, since you asked."
Mary answered him, smiling coldly.
"I was never able to get it right before. But it looks like this time I managed it. How about that, boys?" "Right."
Luke grinned as well, vicious and wild.
"No more magic to hide behind, asshole."
Astos held up a hand in a feeble attempt to block, but one swing of the fighter's silver sword sent the arm flying in a spray of blood. Another hack removed his left arm as well, and when Astos turned to flee, he was met with a massive fireball that blasted him across the room, slamming his shattered body against the back wall. Before he could fall down, Luke's sword flew through the air and slammed into his chest, pinning him above his throne. The Dark Elf King's head lowered, limp, and as blood spewed from his mouth, the crown tumbled and rolled along the ground.
"No!"
Astos moaned.
"It was mine. My crown, my kingdom. Mine, all mine. You had nothing. You are nothing."
Luke picked up the crown.
"Go to hell, and good riddance."
Astos tried to respond, but another gout of blood spilled, and with a feeble sigh he died. Stepping onto the throne, Luke retrieved his sword, then turned his back on the limp corpse that fell down, face first, onto the throne. Crossing over to Drake's body, he picked his friend up.
"A cleric? We need to get him there, and fast. We'll be traveling to Elfland at top speed, then. Yes.
Mary wiped something from her eye.
Why did he do that? Taking that spell. There was no reason for him to do that. He said that himself.
Vlad explained as the Invis spell faded and he reappeared.
Out of the four of us, right now he's the weakest. He knew he was the one we could stand to lose the most and maintain the best chance of winning. And it turned out that he was right. That mute spell turned the tide. Good job managing that one, by the way. I know it always gave you trouble.
Mary glared at him.
How could you say that? I know you and him don't get along, but he was still. I'm not insulting him.
Vlad looked at Drake's body, expression hidden as always.
On the contrary. Not many people can realize that sort of thing about themselves, and act on it without a moment's hesitation. Let alone give up their life for another's. I may have been wrong about him. He just might have potential after all. But that's only if we get him to the cleric. Let's go.
Looking up at the crystal ball affixed above the entrance, he called it down with a spell.
Right.
Luke nodded, and the three light warriors walked out of the ruined castle, sparing not a glance for the broken remains of what had once been the Dark Elf King. When Drake's eyes opened again, they only showed pain for the slightest moment before relaxing, as a weak smile came to his face.
Hey! Guys! I guess this means you did it. Nye could.
Stepping forward, Mary helped him to his feet.
Still a little unsteady. That's to be expected, I guess, considering. Still, important thing is we won. You idiot!
Mary chided him lightly, smiling as well.
Promise me you'll never do anything as stupid as that again. Oh, I'll be glad to promise that.
Drake winked.
Of course, I won't actually mean it, but I'll say it as many times as you want. I'm tricky like that. We noticed.
Luke gave him a hearty thump on the back that almost knocked him over, then turned to the cleric.
Thanks, Father. We're glad to have him return to us again. If you killed Astos, it's the least I can do. All of Elfland owes you.
The elven cleric smiled through his heavy white beard.
Besides, I owe young Master Drake a certain debt.
Drake froze at that, then turned and looked at the cleric.
Father Dell. I didn't recognize where I really was at first.
The younger elf muttered.
You don't really owe me anything. I was young and stupid when I said those things. I know you would have done something if you could. Even so, I have always wished I could have done more.
The cleric shook his head.
And so I am glad I could give you your life back, at least. And that you have found friends who care for you. Yeah. I guess I have, at that.
Drake looked at all of them in turn.
Just try not to do it again, at least.
Vlad harumphed.
I know it's a tall order for you, but if we have to galvanize your corpse every week, we'll never get our job done until we're older than the sages. Ha! Fair enough.
Drake laughed, long and loud.
Next time you can try it, then. It's not as bad as I thought it'd be. I'll bet.
The black mage rolled his eyes.
If you're feeling semi-functional again, we had best go north. Vicky will have to take us all the way back to Matoya's. Oh man, that's right.
Drake winced.
There and back. That's a while, even at sea. At least it's someplace we can access with the ship at all.
Luke shrugged.
And aside from the Sahaghin and all that, you'll be able to relax and rest up once we're on board. When you put it like that, how can I resist?
Drake laughed again.
Lead the way to the luxury pirate cruise, buddy.
The trip to the northern harbor was like the one from Astos Keep, which had been like their passage to Corneria after killing Garland, mostly trouble-free. It seemed even ogres and creep were capable of realizing it might not be a good idea to tangle with those who had come out of the marsh cave in one piece and blown the roof off of a certain castle. There was one incident when a green ogre led two of its lesser-colored compatriots at them, bellowing madly, but true to his word Drake had stayed back and let Vlad open with a wave of lightning before Luke finished the green, taking a plain ogre for himself. And so they returned to the harbor, all in good health.
Ahoy, mateys!
Bicky called as they climbed aboard.
What's the deal now, eh? Got the key. Close.
Luke admitted.
Problem is, we need to get something from a witch up near Corneria, then come back here. What, you mean Matoya?
Bicky inquired.
Nice old bird. Didn't know you were acquainted. We met on our way to see you in Provoca.
Drake explained, choosing not to ask how the grizzled pirates were familiar with the witch.
So you know how to get to her, then? Cool. Yaver, there's a nice little beach near her place where we can dock, on the north side of Lake Corneria.
Bicky stumped over to the wheel.
We'll have to go up the Temple River, but that's okay, it's wide enough and that bridge is high enough for Amphitrite to fit under. Let's set sail, me hearties.
About a week later, they entered the Temple River, passing by north of Corneria City. Luke stared at it the entire time, then sighed once it was past.
I still wish we could have stopped by there. We'll be coming back there soon enough anyways.
Mary reminded him.
We'll be getting the TNT out of the treasury once we have the key. You can visit Sarah when we do that. Yeah, I know.
Luke shook his head.
It's just... Ah well, never mind. It happens.
Drake nodded sympathetically.
Knowing what you gotta do doesn't make it any easier. You're getting better with that loot, though. You don't sound like a dying mule anymore. Gee, thanks.
Luke rolled his eyes, then looked up at the approaching bridge.
Here it comes. You're sure we can fit under? It looks awfully close. I've been this way before.
Bicky nodded sagely.
Unless there's a high tide right now or something. Maybe I should have checked.
As they reached the bridge, the crow's nest buckled and snapped off against the marble, falling over into the water with the unlucky pirate who had been up there wailing all the way. Bicky glanced up at his now bare mainmast, face calm.
Yup. Definitely should have checked for a high tide.
He remained silent for a few moments longer, then exploded in screaming curses.
Grab on, Tim!
Mr. Smite yelled to the unfortunate pirate, tossing him a rope.
See if you can rope that around the nest before climbing up. If we can tow it, we can try and fix it back on once we're at anchor. Hey, there's the lake up ahead.
Luke pointed out.
It's on the north side, you said? That's the closest to her place.
Bicky sighed, looking up at the mast again.
It'll be a bit of a walk, but not too bad. We'll be here when you get back.
After dropping anchor, the light warriors went north, following their map to reach the cave. As they entered, the broom greeted them again.
Allah! Srolivart Solhi? Woiwankai? Gabimaklo? Yo!
Luke replied.
Can we see Matoya? We've found her crystal.
The broom actually jumped.
Isalp, Yosset.
Sweeping quickly, it led them to the same room where they had met Matoya last time. She looked at them quickly as they entered.
The 4 young travelers from a month ago. The brooms tell me you have my crystal. That's right, ma'am.
Drake pulled it out of his bag and handed it to her.
A jerk named Astos from Elfland said he swiped it from you. He's chunky style now, by the way. Yes, this is it. I can see.
Matoya gleefully held the crystal to her face and looked at them all in turn, smiling widely.
And you dealt with the one responsible. It seems I am in your debt. What can I do for you? Astos also said you would know a cure for the malady of the Prince of Elfland.
Mary explained.
He's been under a powerful sleep spell for 5 years. Aha! Indeed, I can provide the remedy.
Matoya turned to a cluttered chest of drawers and began searching through it.
Elven biology is more complex than human or dwarvish, but I've been able to figure out the differences. Here we go.
Pulling the stopper out of a black jar, Matoya removed a withered brown leaf.
Steep this herb in warm water, then have him drink it. Don't let any other elves have any, though, or even sniff the fumes. They won't be able to sleep for a week. I'll remember that.
Drake promised, taking the herb. Matoya nodded, walking back to her seat.
Very well then. Our business is concluded. Will you require my hospitality for another night before you go? We'll just head off, thanks. Our ship is near here.
Luke shrugged.
Bicky and Smite said to say hi, by the way.
Matoya stared at them for a moment, laughed.
You've hooked up with those 2 rogues? I'll have to ask Bicky to tell me the story behind that when he's got the leisure. It should be amusing. Good luck on your journeys, then.
Waving, the light warriors departed and returned to Bicky. Another week later, they arrived in Elfland once more, and returned to the palace at top speed. The guards immediately showed them to Chancellor Gillian again, who rose from his seat as soon as he saw them.
My friends, I've heard that you killed Astos. It's been going around the city for days now. Is this true? Indeed it is.
Luke confirmed.
He duped us at first. Sent us into the marsh cave to get the crown of Elfland for him, then tried to off us as thanks. Didn't turn out so well for him, though. And we found out how to wake up the prince. That's where we've been since. Wonderful.
Gillian's eyes lit up as Drake produced the herb. Following Matoya's instructions, they prepared the brew, then slowly administered it to the sleeping prince. At first, there was no reaction, but then his eyelids shot open and he jumped to his feet, gagging.
That's horrible, Gillian.
The prince protested weakly.
What was that? Wait, what? What's going on here? Who are these people? What happened? You've been awakened thanks to these brave heroes, my prince. These are the light warriors.
Gillian explained. The prince turned to stare at them each in turn, then sat back down, stunned.
The day of prophecy has come already? How long have I been asleep? The last thing I remember was instructing Gillian to give the crown to the Wizards of Marsh to protect it from that maniac who claimed to be my half-brother, then seeing him burst in here. He did. Believe me, he did, Your Highness.
Drake assured him.
We had plenty of trouble getting in there to take it back. And then we went and killed Astos, so he's no longer a threat to your kingdom. Here. I believe this is yours.
He offered the crown to the prince, who gingerly took it up.
You're the king of Elfland now, your majesty. Let me be the first of your subjects to hail you as such. You're an elf too.
The prince realized.
You and your friends have saved your country. You're a hero. What is your name, and that of your family?
Drake winced, then sighed.
I'm Drake. Just Drake. My family was unnamed.
The prince's eyes widened, and Jillian looked away uncomfortably.
Huh?
Luke blinked.
What's that? Not now.
Mary shook her head, stopping him.
I see. Well, regardless, you are a hero of our kind still, Drake.
The prince nodded.
I would honor you all for months on end, but if it is the time of prophecy, I assume you have more pressing concerns.
They all nodded.
Very well then. I shall, at the least, complete my purpose. The Mystic Key. Elfland's monarchy has held it in waiting for you for centuries. Now I can finally entrust you with it.
Standing on his throne, he reached up to the back and twisted an ornament, pulling it off. From a hidden niche there, he pulled out a slender silver key, and stepping down, he delivered it into Drake's hands.
All of Elfland relies on you now, even more than before. Astos was but a mortal. Your true enemies are beyond imagining for any save you. We're counting on you.
He and Jillian saluted them, and without a word, the light warriors returned the gesture. That evening, after they had eaten, Drake rather somberly asked the other three to follow him into another part of town. As it turned out, a shabbier one. Without a word, they accompanied their elven friend until he stopped in front of the smashed wreckage of what looked to have been an already pitiful shack.
I suppose I had to come back here before we left. I've wanted to ever since we came to Elfland again, to be honest.
Drake began.
Don't know why I waited this long. Some sort of stupid pride, I guess. Didn't want you guys to find out where I came from, for some reason. I know you wouldn't think less of me because of it. Even you, Vlad. You would get on my case for everything else, sure, but not this. Still. I don't know, sometimes I don't think logically.
He chuckled, closing his eyes.
Sorry I'm taking so long to get to the point. It's okay.
Luke assured him.
Take as long as you need. Right?
Drake gathered himself.
I was born here. Last kid out of 5. Never knew my old man. Pretty soon after I came along he got killed by some bandits while he was out in the woods trying to find something to feed us. As you can see, we were pretty much the bottom of the social system here. Mom worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep us all alive. My brothers and sister taught me how to supplement that on the streets through various illegal means, though we never told Ma. Would have broken her heart to know. That's how I spent my formative years, a sneak thief on the streets.
He paused for a few moments before continuing.
Then one night, when I was out looting pockets at a richer part of town, a marauding party of green ogres came barging into the edge of town and made a beeline for my house. No.
Mary looked at the ruins with a horrified sort of realization.
Your family? Did they? Yeah.
Drake bit his lip.
By the time the watch got there, it was too late. My whole family was pulverized. They wouldn't let me see them. But not even the cleric could do anything with what was left. I was on my own. All I could salvage from the ruins was this orb. Ma hid it, saying it was the only treasure our family had. It was all I had left to remind me of them. Then one day, the guard caught me rifling through a noble's house, and they found the orb on me. Of course they thought I had stolen it from its rightful owner, but when it turned out it reacted to me and nobody else, they decided that even a sneak thief was better than nothing. Gave me as much training as they could, although obviously it was nothing near your guys, and told me who and what I was. And who my enemy was. Enemy?
Vlad inquired.
Yeah.
Drake's voice became angrier.
See, Green Ogre packs that big don't come out here, and they don't just break into the capital and go for random houses for no reason. They had a reason. And the scholars at the castle told me where the green ones come from. To the west, on the turf of Lich, the fiend of earth. And they went right for my family. The way I see it, Lich tried to rub me out, and managed to get everybody I cared about instead. That was what motivated me from then on. I always knew I'd be a pretty poor excuse for a light warrior, but I figured maybe, just maybe, if the other three were strong enough, and I could at least keep myself alive, I could pay that asshole Lich back someday. And then I went to Corneria. And now I have more people I care about again. We care about you too, Drake.
Mary placed a hand on his shoulder.
When you were hit by the rub spell, I felt like my heart was going to stop. Don't sell yourself short. We need you too. It's going to take all four of us to do this. Yeah. And you're right. We'll track down Lich, and we'll make him pay.
Luke promised.
Him and the rest of them. We can do this. Humph. Well, it's nice to finally have the answers.
Vlad admitted.
Now that we know, then. The sooner we get going, the sooner we make Lich scream. Heh. Fair enough. But wait up one night, okay? It's a little late to set out.
Drake smiled.
Let's get back to that inn, huh? And then tomorrow, back to Bicky again, and on with the show.
End of chapter.